Good morning, distinguished colleagues, both in person and in the virtual world. Welcome to this year's London International Shipping Week 2021, and this session here today is around the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, and particularly the UK flag. When I stood up in front of you all at LISW 2019, I don't think any of us could have imagined the upturn and change in the world that we would all face. I hope that you're all well and that things are starting to return to normal for you. Today, I'd like to talk about what it means to us to be the best performing flag in the world, how we at the UK Ship Register and specifically UK Maritime Services are just so much more than a ship register. And I would also like to talk to you about what we've achieved since the last shipping week. Before I move on, I'd like to make some introductions. I'm Katy Ware. I'm the Director of UK Maritime Services with the MCA and the UK's permanent representative to the International Maritime Organisation. Graham, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, thank you, Katy. Good morning, everybody. I'm Graham Candy. I'm the new account manager within the UK Shipping Concierge within the MCA, but prior to that, in June, I was the business development manager in the UK Ship Register. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here today with you, Katy. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. So as I've just said, the UK Maritime Services, the Ship Register, is so much more than just a ship register. As you'll have heard from my introduction, my previous directorate has now been rebranded UK Maritime Services, and we thought it was fundamental change that needed to be made as we focus on putting customers at the heart of everything that we do. The Ship Register is now digital, which has been a huge achievement even during the COVID. We've got an integrated services and we've got 24/7 customer support. We have transformed the survey and inspection team. We've got expert technical advice, policy consultation, and above all, international diplomacy support. As I've said at London 2019, we aim to be the best performing flag. Best performing flag for the UK doesn't necessarily mean a flag that sits at the top of all of our league tables. For us to be the best performing flag, it's about one that shows value and it adds value to its customers. We believe that we achieve this by protecting reputations through professionalism, help our customers deal with the unexpected, and support customers through future change. Now, those were quite an ambitious list of things there, but I believe, despite the topsy-turvy world of COVID, we have actually done a remarkable job of achieving those. When I spoke at LISW 2019, I made a pledge that safety and people would always be a priority for the UK, and we will always be proud of that. We aim to put the customer at the heart of what we do. We said we would build strategic partnerships, and we said that we would empower innovation. And as I've said, whilst COVID has turned things on its head, I believe that we have fulfilled that promise and we will keep building on it. In respect of COVID, I would actually just like to give you some examples of how we've achieved what we've achieved in the UK. As many of you know, seafarers were given rights to be key workers. The UK was the very first country to do that. And throughout the COVID, we have worked tirelessly to support the seafarers. We've made sure that our responsibilities under the MLC, the Maritime Labour Convention, have been enforced and upheld. And just to give you an example, we have been particularly strong in supporting the cruise industry. You know, the cruise industry was hugely impacted. It came to a grinding halt. And just to give you an example of the logistical challenge that the MCA and colleagues at the Department for Transport were faced with during the pandemic. In the UK alone, we had 32 vessels with over 13,000 crew needing to be repatriated. And those crew were from 112 different countries. No vessel was ever turned away from the UK. And on average, each vessel spent 12 weeks in port, supported by the UK, to repatriate the crew and make sure that the crew that remained on board were safe and looked after and supported. And I would just say, as a flag, Of all of those vessels, only 11 were on the UK register. So in a time of crisis, the UK flag, effectively, the cruise industry, we became flag blind. So we just supported everybody for the sake of the seafarers. And then obviously, if we've moved forward, we've done a huge amount of technical work to support the cruise ships as they restart. So hugely proud of all of that work. As I've said, we've supported the seafarers throughout. We've worked an awful lot with the class societies to make sure that ship operators could keep moving so that we could keep their ships safe. We worked to extend the certificates we delegated to the class societies, all in all to support tirelessly the work of our operators throughout. So I think that's a really good example of where we've built those strategic partnerships. I'd like now to talk about some of the more forward-looking work that we were doing. We talked about supporting innovation. And within the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, we've set up a team, a Maritime Future Technologies team. And this team has been specifically set up to support new technologies around the decarbonisation and also around autonomy. Yet currently, Maritime operates under an inherently prescriptive framework built up over a long period of time. This environment is hugely complex and covers both domestic and international. The approach that is needed by industry is one to provide certainty, but we need to be able to innovate to scale and adopt at pace. And this is why the MCA has taken the decision to apply quite a large amount of resource in this area to support the decarbonisation of the industry. We are also working on autonomy projects, and we continue to drive forward innovation in this area. And we're working with a number of companies around their autonomy projects. There is another key piece of work, and again, this is always about putting seafarers at the heart of what we do. In the UK, there's something called the Maritime Skills Commission that has been established, and this is around supporting the future careers and developments within the maritime industry. Within that, there is a group that has been set up. We did a review of the cadet training, which was chaired by the MCA's Chief Executive, Brian Johnson. That report has now been published. You can find it on the Maritime Skills Commission website. The report in all has 23 recommendations, quite a substantial amount of recommendations, but it's all around that modernisation piece of the seafarers. And what we really want to do is shake up that education for the future of seafarers. We want to modernise the education, we want to modernise the training, we want to modernise the current funding. We need to take into account the leadership skills that are required for the future seafarers as we move to the decarbonisation. We need to enable them to work with the new technologies that they will be faced with. We need to streamline the training to make it much more in line with normalised education within the UK. We need to take into account the needs of our shipping operators from an education piece, and we also need to take into account the social trends and diversity as we face. And key and above all this is about attracting more and more STEM students into the maritime profession, how we can give them the skills and the competencies so that they actually stay within the industry, that they can see a career path through the whole of the maritime sector. So that's really quite a quick gallop through where we've been with the UK flag, what we're aiming to do. I still stand by my commitment that I made at LISW 2019, that we will strive to be the best performing flag, that we will build those strategic relationships, we will support the industry with innovation. We are hugely committed to the decarbonisation piece, and above all, we will put the customers at the heart of everything that we do. And before I move to questions, I would just like to play a short video which I hope will demonstrate some of what I've just talked about.
At Carnival UK, P&O Cruises and Cunard, we have been working with the UK flag on our new build project since 2013.
When you get the opportunity to be at the very forefront of shipbuilding technology, it's just so exciting.
They have become a trusted partner and a valuable part of the delivery team. The UK flag offers flexibility on the shipbuilding itself. They provide extensive technical expertise and industry knowledge with a solution-based approach. We know building in partnership with the UK flag means safety of our passengers and crew comes first.
At Northern Marine, safety, security and environmental protection is at the heart of everything we do. We are benchmarked at the highest levels of safety and operational performance. The support we receive from the UK flag is first class. The UK flag is extremely reliable, both through the digital systems that are provided and the competent network of surveyors that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This allows us to make the critical decisions at the right time to ensure our vessels trade safely. The UK's activity at IMO in extremely important subjects of emissions, future fuels and sustainable shipping gives us great confidence that the thoughts and views of ship owners are collectively obtained through the MCA and discussed at the highest levels.
The University of Southampton, through the Southampton Marine and Maritime Institute, has been working closely with the Maritime Coast Guard Agency's Maritime Future Technologies team. The research that we are conducting will help industry make informed decisions about the type of fuels they would employ for future shipping and about how to use those fuels in a safe manner, both for crew and for the vessel.
Seafarer training, welfare and safety is our top priority for us. At Carnival UK, we work alongside the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency to create opportunities for new recruits into the industry, with the UK government support with maritime training funding.
The UK flag assures our clients that the high standards they expect are maintained and their commercial objectives are realised.
I hope that confirmed what I've told you. I think the best thing is I think we should open the floor for some questions because I think it's a lot easier for us to articulate everything that we've been doing. Debbie, did you want to see if there's any questions for us?
Yes, certainly. Does anyone in the room have any questions before I kick off anything that comes in online?
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
Hi, Katy. Jonathan Pointer, or Katy Marine, former Deputy Harbour Master, Falkland Islands, as I'm sure you remember. You're talking about the Maritime Futures team and decarbonisation and autonomy. There's obviously a lot of focus with the decarbonisation side of things, but I think the autonomy side is perhaps a little overshadowed by it. Could you just expand a little bit on what we might expect down the road with regards to autonomy?
Yep, I'll start, and I might ask you to say a few words, Ashley, because I've got the leads at the back of the room here. So I think in all honesty, if I'm absolutely frank, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Brian, decarbonisation will overshadow the autonomous piece. I think where the two worlds will start to collide is where we actually look at that automation and what comes around as we move to decarbonisation, and there may be more automation on board the vessels. For the MCA, we have got a large number of smaller projects around the autonomy that the team have been working on to support the industry. And we put a lot of effort into these projects. Now, they are currently teams in the standard teams in my area are working with Maritime Future Technologies. We are revising the workboat code because we're finding that a lot of these vessels are the under 24-metre vessels. So we will be revising the workboat code to include a chapter specifically on the autonomy. Where we're grasping it with is there are certain elements of the autonomous vessels when they're built, so there is certain standards that they have to achieve, particularly around their construction and the stability. They are pretty much in line with standard vessels. then the complex piece is around the artificial intelligence, and that takes quite a lot, and that's got to go through a risk-based approach. So we are working very, very closely on a number of projects. We are supporting them through the regulatory piece, trying to be flexible as we can, but also as we move forward with these projects, we will learn from them, and then they will become normalised. And I always use the sort of example of, you know, when the world came up with alternate design arrangements and suddenly we had oversized lifeboats, and how could we cope with that? And it was all quite, oh my God. But now they're just normal. That's just normal to us. So eventually I believe that we'll get to a place with the autonomy where it will become normalised and we know what we're doing. But Ashley, did you want to add anything to that?
The only thing I would say is autonomy tends to be seen as the extreme ends of the spectrum. Oh, yeah, autonomy seems to be the extreme ends of the spectrum with remotely operated or fully autonomous vessels. I think Katie's hit the nail on the head with the increased levels of automation and digitalisation across the whole fleet. And I think that's going to be where we're going to see the most impact. You'll see these niche applications of full autonomy or remotely operated, and we're here trying to safely enable those technologies as we are with the decarbonisation technologies. But I think there's going to be the huge uptake across the whole fleet of increased levels of automation and digitalisation, which as regulators we're going to have to grapple with as industry is. So, yeah, hopefully that answers or adds to what Katie said.
Are there any further questions in the room at all? No? Okay. I think we talked a lot about seafarer training and the future of seafarer training, whereas I think the wellbeing and safety aspect has been a big feature of the last sort of 18 months or so. Can you go into a little bit more detail about how the UK flag is focusing on seafarer wellbeing and safety?
Yeah, so seafarer welfare is a huge priority for us. And my colleague at the back of the room, Ian Blair, who's my assistant director, he was involved with a project with LISW around why social interaction matters on board of vessels. And this was a project that was led on where we interviewed seafarers to find out exactly, you know, what impacted on their mental well-being, because in the MCA we firmly believe that well-being, mental and physical, of seafarers is absolutely critical to the safety of the vessel. And as part of that project, it became very clear that the well-being of the seafarers can be detrimental to safety performance on board and the efficiency of the vessel. So we've done a lot of work in that area. My seafarers team, during the lockdown, we issued a lot of guidance on coping with the COVID and the long-term impacts of all of that. And so moving forward, and human element obviously is a huge thing for us. So a lot of work goes into all of that. A lot of studies have gone into that. We are currently just working with a company called Tap It on how we can support and do an online program of support for the cadets when they're at sea, and that's a package of online modules that supports them about what it's like to go to sea, how you deal with the different cultures on board, what it's like to be away from home, you know, even down to preparing for your MCA oral exams, which is probably the most terrifying experience most cadets ever go through, and there's a lot of chuckling in the room there. So it isn't just about safety. The well-being of our seafarers is absolutely critical, and I think, you know, seafarers have come to the forefront during COVID. We shouldn't forget about that moving forward. We can't just let the seafarer just slip back into behind the curtains. So, you know, personally for myself and a lot of my team, you know, or should I say most of my team, that whole supporting the seafarer, understanding what well-being is about, getting the guidance out there, and just really understanding that, you know, how heavy the impact is of seafarers' well-being actually on the safe operation of vessels. Ian, did you want to just add anything more about your ISWAN?
Great, thank you, Katie. There are a couple more questions that have come in. So one of them is, how do you envision the way operators flag their vessels will change in the future? And how will the way ships are operated also change?
So I'll answer the first one about how people will flag. My personal view as a result of the COVID, but also because of what we're facing in the future around the decarbonisation piece, I believe the choice of flag isn't always going to be about the price tag. It's going to be about what the flag, the value that the flag can add to their businesses. So how can we support them to make the right strategic decisions, to make that investments that they need to do, that technical support to help them through what we are faced with in the future from a decarbonisation piece. And I'll just give you an example, because we often talk about the diplomatic support that we can give. We have a network throughout the world, so we can often step in and support our operators when they find themselves in a situation in another country that actually could cost them a huge amount of money, that they could have to come off charter for. And those are the sort of services that we help those customers to actually save money, because we can step in diplomatically, discuss with colleagues, support them, give colleagues in other flag administrations the assurance that we know what we're doing, we understand what the customer's needs are, yes, we are okay with doing X, Y, and Z. So actually, I don't think it's about the price tag of the flag going forward. I believe that it's about the value that we add to our customers in making those strategic decisions as they move forward with the decarbonisation piece, and just how we can support them on a day-to-day basis from a technical perspective.
Great, thank you. So I think one of the questions is now EU exit related. With regards to how do you envisage some of the top ship owners that may have been forced to move ships away from the flag, but quite complimentary of the flag at the same time? How do you see any way of winning them back?
So, yeah, we took a big hit. So you'll all recall that at the last shipping week, we had a substantial loss from the flag. That took us down to about the 10.6 million gross tonnes after that we took that big hit. I'm really pleased to say that we've stuck steady at that 10.6. We've even had a small uplift this year. So I think we're over the EU hurdle. But yeah, as you said, there was a lot of compliments about that they didn't want to leave the flag. It was for EU reasons, and they were very complimentary. As you will all know, the UK flag no longer has parity with the EU. We are on our own here, and that's the way things are moving forward. There is no doubt that to attract those people back, I mean, we've talked about all the technical support, there has to be fiscal opportunities that will attract those people back to the flag. We can't shy away from that. And there we did make a pledge that we would look at the fiscal opportunities at the shipping week in 2019. Those fiscal opportunities have been reviewed. But ultimately, that is for Her Majesty's Treasury to make those final decisions. So we did continue. We do realise that there has got to be a fiscal attraction. And I might just ask Graham to come in a moment. So there has to be a fiscal attraction for those people to come back. But the policy options have got to be reviewed, and that's very much in the hands of Her Majesty's Treasury. But Graham, can I ask you to?
Yep. Yeah, by all means. Thank you, Katie. As well as what Katie just alluded to, the UK, having come out of the EU needs to make its fiscal offer, as Katie's mentioned, attractive to the sector. And in doing so, I think the play and the game, our way forward is bringing that around decarbonisation and the green agenda. So we're looking at a lot of opportunities which we will be looking to bring forward in the coming years, but obviously link it to the current agenda as well, which we believe the sector will welcome, given the challenges they've got to do with their fleets moving forward. So we believe that's probably the best way forward.
Great, thank you. So next question. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the UK flag in terms of growth or becoming the best performing international flag?
So I don't have too much concern about becoming the best performing flag. You know, we're on call Ship 21, Paris MOU, we were #1 last year. We're taking a bit of a dip this year, but we're still on a whitelist. You know, you just hear the testimonials from our operators and the people that we work with who really are confirming what that best performing flag means to us. I think I'll be honest with you, the biggest challenge will be the fiscal piece, but as we've said, we've been looking at options there, but really, in terms of best performing, I think we're on a very good trajectory. I think we've held our own during COVID. I think we have shown how agile, our technical expertise, we've really come into our own, which is a great thing. And then because we've had the opportunity to work with people that are not just on the UK flag in COVID, we've actually broadened our net in terms of capability as a flag. So, yeah, we can't go into the fiscal details, but the largest barrier, let's be honest, is I think it's reasonable to say, Graham, is the fiscal offers.
Yes, and also the repositioning, having come out of the EU and everybody understanding what the UK's offer is today. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge this year, isn't it, yeah. Katy?
Thank you. So we do have another question. So how will the MCA be able to resource the regulatory development given the pace and increasingly rapid pace of change for these technological developments?
Sorry, was the question how will we
resource it? Yeah.
That's a good question. No, I'm only joking. So obviously we've established a Maritime Future Technologies team. That's it's a big team of people. That's a lot of resource that we, as the executive, decided to commit to this. We have got a large number in the sort of the opposite to the Maritime Future Technologies team. So you have the Future Technologies team. Let's explain how this works. We've got the Future Technologies team. They are there to collaborate and partnership with operators, projects, etc. They bring a lot of insight and knowledge to that. They then feed and work along parallel with our regulatory standards team. The standards team has also been revamped over the last 2 years. We've got a lot of bright talent in there. But then the key thing is also about what do we need moving forward, because we do need some different skill sets. And if any of my survey and inspection and technical people are listening, please don't be offended, but I might not, a chief engineer who's used to working with heavy fuel oil may not necessarily be the right person moving forward. We may need to bring in chemical experts or people that have worked in chemical plants who know how to handle these masses of ammonia or hydrogen. These are really different beasts. And actually, I was talking to colleagues at Lloyd's Register. The people, the brains, the people that know how these engines work, how to handle these fuels, are not necessarily in the maritime industry. And we all face a challenge of how we attract the right skills and competencies moving forward. And even for me, I will need to start thinking about how do I reskill my surveyors, because they are also going to have to learn to work with these new ways of working, with decarbonisation, with different fuels, with different risks on board, with different types of automation. So the whole industry, we talked about the seafarers, the training has got to change. So we as an industry, I think we have to start to open our minds a little bit. Everybody focuses on the fuel options and the technologies, but everything's going to change, how we do surveys and inspections, how we write regulations, how we train seafarers. even for my colleagues in Her Majesty's Coast Guard, how we do counter-pollution response is going to change. The world of compensation and liability is going to change, because we're not just, compensation and liability is about oil spills. So this just isn't about designing an engine. The whole infrastructure of the regulatory piece and what we do is going to fundamentally change. So it's not just about me and where I'm going to get my policy officials from.
Thank you. I think that leads nicely into the next question. You've mentioned ammonia there and hydrogen, but actually this next one's about nuclear. So a plan for nuclear shipping regulation was recently announced. Are you able to explain a little about what prompted it, and is there a possible role of nuclear for the UK merchant fleet of the future?
So the nuclear regulations, that's a coincidence. So what we're doing in the UK is we're moving to something called ambulatory referencing, and that's really a complete restructure of how we do our legislation. So basically, our legislation is written as, for example, our life-saving appliance regulations in the perfect example says, please apply SOLAS in its most up-to-date format. And that allows us to deal with all of the backlog of legislation. So we're always up to date with that legislation. There is a chapter in SOLAS that is around nuclear ships. So this is basically us getting ourselves up to speed and bringing into force the regulations as part of the ambulatory referencing packaging. Now, it was a very lucky coincidence because I don't want to steal the thunder of my colleagues, and I know there's a decarbonisation session later in the week. Let's be honest, nuclear is a very political subject, but there is a lot of people starting to back it, and I don't think we can shy away from that conversation. There's molten salt reactors out there. People are talking about it. It's hugely political. But I think potentially, if I'm honest, and if I'm wrong, I'll take the wrath of the politicians later, I personally believe that there is a future. But, the concept of it's a very difficult one for the public. There's a real hearts and minds around all of that. And what I would just say is, at this particular moment in time, we are not backing one specific fuel, but, the teams have been working on a hypothesis, moving forward where we would go. The long-term, LNG, biofuels, we believe those are transitional fuels moving forward. And really the direction of travel, I believe, is pointing towards ammonia, to hydrogen, and to nuclear. Brian, did you want to? Yeah, you're okay. Is that okay?
Great. I don't think there's any more questions from the chat. I think one last one is, obviously, when we're talking about future, we're talking a lot about different fuel types, but there's also the digitalisation piece that we've got going on. Could you explain a little bit more about the digitalisation programme we've got running at the MCA?
Yeah. So, huge digitalisation programme. Big, we're very paper-centric. Any of those of you in the room that's ever had to apply for a Seafarer's Certificate of Competence will know how much paperwork is involved. So the first piece around the digitalisation, as I've referred to, and Jackie's here, who's heading up the register team. So the register has now gone digital, and I'm pleased to say we managed to get that launched during the crisis and the pandemic. The pandemic, in some respects, has also helped us because we brought forward some digitalisation projects that were, we've brought them forward a lot quicker. So as part of the response to the COVID crisis, we needed to make sure that the seafarers, those cadets coming out of college that were end of their career, who needed to do their oral examinations, the final bit of their examinations before they get their first certificate of competence. We do about 3,500 of those a year. We needed to keep the seafarers moving. We needed to get these boys and girls through the pipeline. So we very quickly moved to a remote means of doing the oral exams so we could continue getting the teams through the pipelines. And the next piece for us is really around the seafarers training and certification area, how we can revamp the processes so we can digitalise that whole process so that seafarers can apply online, they can upload their certificates online, they'll get automated responses. So really to streamline that process and really make the improvements that's needed. And we're looking at something called My MCA, which really is the place to go for seafarers and operators to get access to all of their certificates and their information about their vessels.
Great, thank you. I'll open it up once more if there's any more questions within the room. No? I think we can probably close it there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Debbie. It's been a real privilege and honour to sit in front of real people. It's nice to make a change. Really appreciate the fact that you took the time either to join us here at the IMO or in the virtual world. Obviously, if you do have any questions after the event, please do feel free to contact us. Enjoy Shipping Week and please keep safe. Thank you, everybody.